Yay! Here we are in the UK. The weather is shining. It's April. Can you believe it? We are hotter than the Algarve. Our average temperature today is 22 degrees. It's a party. And in the Algarve, it's a mere 18 degrees. The thing about the UK is that things can turn on a sixpence. Everything can change in one night. Welcome to the Internet Seriously, a humorous look at tech, news and politics. I'm Lucian Taylor in sunny, glorious Oxford.
And I'm Emily Taylor, also in sunny, glorious Oxford.
And I'm Alice Taylor. I thought we were going to have the Ibiza party summer mix. I'm a bit confused.
I can hear kind of Hawaiian guitars and stuff.
I'm feeling really chill.
Calming.
Well, the guys had 30 seconds to find something. Anyway, that's enough of that. Thank you very much. Back to reality. Coming up today, enduring US tariffs reshape the global tech supply chains, and the UK firms are watching closely. Next, we follow the Global Anti-Scam Summit, which we were attending, which emphasises collaboration, victim support and AI-powered prevention. We discuss the key takeaways from the Global Anti-Scam Summit in London 2025. And finally, the TikTok sale deadline dooms. There you go. The TikTok sale deadline looms. Will the UK's king of homemade porn win the bid? Before we dig into this, please hit subscribe to this channel if you're watching this, and hit follow on Apple Podcasts, and rate and review, particularly if you like us. Thank you very much. Emily, you were showing me some interesting facts. You know, the markets are tumbling, aren't they? We've got these US tariffs which have been pushed out there. In Oxford, we are trembling because although it's a sunny day, the BMW next door, the mini factory, is facing a 25% tariff on imports. That's not even a punishment or a vendetta. It's just saying, if you're American and you want to buy a mini, as it's coming from Oxford and not being built in America, it's going to cost you 25% more. What kind of hit is that?
That's huge. And I saw in the Oxford Mail today that the BMW boss, the mini factory boss, is warning that this is just senseless and really going to hurt both Americans and, of course, people here in Oxford. But I've been watching what's been happening to the tech stocks.
I mean,
just
the stocks
today.
are crashing, aren't they?
Crashing. So Apple down over 9%. Amazon, Meta, nearly 9%. ARM, the chip designer, down over 9%. Nvidia, nearly 8%. Google and Microsoft also affected, not so much. So clearly everybody, and particularly you can see, I think, those tech firms that have a hardware element, where it's made in China, made in Asia, are really going to struggle with these tariffs.
And we'll come back to the hardware point, because that's where you start to think about, all the stuff in cars as well.
I've got a thing. So the Switch 2 was announced this week. And so the Nintendo Switch 2, the newest gaming console, and there's been a lot of complaints online about how expensive it is and how expensive games are going to be in America.
So is that from Japan?
Nintendo. And it's interesting just thinking about, I'd never heard of a tariff before this year. I had no idea what it is. And it's this feels like a very abstract kind of like, screw this country, screw that country. And actually now we've got very tangible, real-world examples of how it impacts the everyday.
What do you think about that, Alice? I know that you personally are buying a house, have bought a house, and if you found that overnight your house is 8% worth that much less, what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I guess I'm very unusual and lucky being able to buy a house at all. And it's a very complicated process.
And the bottom line, is it not, Emily, is the stocks. Because and Trump is saying we've had the second day now where stocks are tumbling. These are pension funds. These are people's savings pots. These are old people who've put their money away and they're hoping to live on the returns. And basically they're saying there's no returns for the next year. Yeah. And Trump's saying everything's fine. He actually said everything's going great with 8-9% tumbles. What does bad look like?
Well, also it's he is the master of the soundbite, even if it's the opposite of the truth. He's also obsessed with Wall Street, so I'm sure no matter what he's saying, he will be worried about this. Of course, the long-term plan is that by putting up these walls of tariffs, it will encourage people to onshore manufacturing back into America. But that's a very long-term strategy. Whoa. And particularly for tech markets like looking at NVIDIA and ARM, which are in the semiconductors field, where a semiconductor will usually cross maybe 80 national borders in its manufacturing process. So onshoring that sort of manufacture is not as simple as it sounds in tech.
Let's strategize about this, Alice, in terms of the Mini. Okay, right. You've got a manufacturer who is essentially German, the BMW group. And Trump is basically saying, he's taxing like mad, the EU anyway. The EU are angry. They're not happy about this. They're not, they're trying to remain calm, but they're angry. So his gamble is that someone like BMW is going to stop manufacturing something like the Mini, which is a sort of British cult icon, and set up the factory in the US to avoid tariffs. What's the reality of that?
Yeah, well, it's just like with the Switch 2. It's like what the consumer sees is just this thing that I really like is now just really, really expensive. And I guess it's easy to kind of be like, oh, it's Japan's fault. Why have they made the Nintendo so expensive? Or it's the Mini factory's fault. And it's been quite funny watching this whole story reported by the BBC, because it will be like, this is incredible for America, says Trump, as stock markets completely tank with like a big line that's like
Yes, and we're hearing about a thing called supply chain exodus. So in response to persistent tariffs, tech firms are apparently actively re-evaluating and diversifying their supply chains, because you think actually there are supplies of electronic components and parts for cars and things like that are from the US, which are now subject to colossal tariffs, particularly if those parts have themselves come from China.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good point, Luce, because who's being quiet at the moment?
Yeah.
Who's being the friend to all the ASEAN countries? We're freaking out about our 10% tariffs. ASEAN countries in Southeast Asia, which don't have great economies, are absolutely being hammered by these tariffs. And China is a good friend to them in their time of need and will provide access to their market of 1.5 billion people.
Yes. What do you do, Alice, when you're bullied? Do you try and appease the bully, or do you go into the arms of people who are calm and parental and protective?
Well, something I thought is interesting is that the UK's got a 10% tariff. So does the Taliban. So we're in the same same group as the Taliban, which is very good.
And what about Russia? What sort of tariffs
I think they're off the
Russia
list.
got?
I think they're fine. Russia and North Korea are not named.
So what is also interesting is there's a remote Antarctic outpost island. So there's the McDonald Island, populated by penguins and seals.
Lovely.
No human has even
What are they by?
visited the island. Not even like living on the island. They haven't visited the island in over 10 years. Mm-hmm. It is only accessible via a 7-day boat trip from southwest Australia. They are subject to 10% tariffs as well. So McDonald Island, penguins and seals, the UK, and the Taliban.
Sorry, the penguins are right. Interesting.
You can judge people by the company they keep.
I've got to take you up on that.
I would go for the penguins.
Sorry, the penguins are selling something to America that is now subject to a
Subject to 10%. Yeah, so any imports from
Fish?
McDonald Island. Well, also he's put a tariff on
David
Christmas
Attenborough.
Island.
David Attenborough.
There's a tariff on Christmas Island, so I think he just heard the names McDonald's.
Oh.
I like that.
Yeah.
Christmas. I like
Christmas.
Lovely. Who
Let's
doesn't
do
love
that.
Christmas?
Right.
Tariffs, 10%.
We've had enough of that. We're now going to report on the Global Anti-Scam Summit in London. But before that, it's time for our Guilty Pleasure Online.
New graphic.
Oh, right. Oh, very nice. I haven't seen that before. I don't know why we're looking at Emily, because Alice Taylor,
Yeah.
it's time for what is your Guilty Pleasure Online?
So my guilty pleasure online.
She's
this
reading
week-
her
You're
phone.
reading your
She's
phone.
reading, she
I know
can't
I've
even
got a
remember
video
it.
that, so basically I follow this account on TikTok called Mr. Cody Darla, who pretends to be like a nursery manager or like a playgroup manager who's in charge of looking after Trump's billionaires. So for example, this is after Elon did his Roman salute at the inauguration.
Sit down in the naughty corner. You naughty boy. Don't have a go at me, okay? I didn't know he was going to do a salute. I put him in the timeout zone. Yes, of course he's crying. You know you're crying, aren't you, Elon? Because you know you've done something naughty.
Well, you've done something naughty. And then the other one was after
Elon.
Signal Gate. There's JD Vance and Pete Hegseth.
Of course I've confiscated their phones. I'm just talking to them now. Pete, JD, I'm not angry. I'm just very, very disappointed. Okay, JD, stop crying. Okay, don't stop
And then
crying.
he's like,
They're crying.
naughty thing number one is that,
Yeah.
we had a group chat to discuss
Yeah.
war
National
strikes.
security.
You were meant to be doing finger painting, and you said that your friend Europe is a terrible person. And look at what you were getting so silly with the finger painting that we added a journalist to the group chat by mistake. It was
This
very
is-
naughty.
We need to hear more and more takeaways from this, because this is fantastic
Just
sort of
I'm going
primary
to
school
subscribe.
management
Well, also,
techniques.
Well, I think
left
it's
a
the
comment
only thing
on
that
one
would
of
work.
his. Yeah, I left
We
a
go
comment on one of
squeaky,
his
we're going
videos,
squeaky.
which was like, think of what one day of a primary school teacher could achieve with these guys of just like, sit down, you're being a very naughty boy, and that
For making them do
has
finger
developed
painting.
these characters of like Elon is this kind of unhinged, like runs around just with his finger paints. Mark Zuckerberg is this kind of pathetic child, and all the other billionaires kind of bully him. And so he's like, Mark, come on, let's go and play with you. Stop being mean to Mark, Elon. You're a very naughty boy.